Matty Miller here with Pursuit Real Estate. I hope you guys are doing great. And we are back for our second series of what to know before you buy and kind of your buying roadmap. We did a video last week that was talking about the 8 stages of the buying process. And today we're going to break down some other things that talk about knowing things before you buy. So when you work with an agent, must-haves versus want-haves, location, working with lenders, what costs to expect, and basically contracts and disclosures. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there. Home warranties, home insurance, things like that. We're going to break all that stuff down right now. All right, guys. So when you are looking to purchase a home, and this isn't necessarily exclusive to the Northeast Florida market, this might be pretty much everywhere in the country. For the most part, different places have a little bit of different expectations and costs and things like that. But this is primarily tied to North Florida here, and more importantly, tied to Pursuit Real Estate. So a couple things we want to break down. When it comes to working with Pursuit Real Estate, we work as a single agent. A lot of brokers will work as transaction brokers, which means we only work in your best interest as a single agent. Transaction brokers don't actually have full disclosure. So we'll talk about full disclosure, loyalty, confidentiality, and obedience, which again, those are kind of some weird words. And they're like, I don't understand what all this means. I'll break it down for you in layman's terms. We are going to tell you the absolute truth. Bottom line. Okay. We have to be in your corner. We are there to represent you specifically, not just the transaction. Okay. That's the easiest way to put it. We can represent you in new construction purchases. We can do that as well. We can find foreclosure and probate properties. Not really my personal favorite thing to do because it's kind of a pain. If you have something in there, understand that that is a heavier process. We can help with that, but it does take longer. It's not always guaranteed. They do pose some problems, but we are seeing them come back on the market a little bit. Do I think we're going to see a ton of them? I don't, but at the same time, they do exist and we can't help with those. The biggest thing is setting up the custom searches, and that way you're just not out there looking on Zillow and Realtor and Redfin and all these other big websites. We can set up basically really targeted searches for you specifically to a neighborhood, to this, really, really get in the weeds on what we're looking for. And that way they're going to come directly to you. And you don't have to worry about all the ads, because all the advertisements on Zillow and Homes.com and Realtor.com and all the other things are just being paid for by another realtor that wants to talk to you. That is it. They're advertising to you 100%. So we can kind of keep that in-house, makes things a little bit easier. If you have any questions, you literally hit a button, it pings me, and all of a sudden, hey, we have a question answered. Fantastic. So a couple of things there. We talk a lot about must-haves versus want-haves, wants versus needs. And again, we're always kind of looking for the base level of, when we're looking for buyers, is, hey, I need at least 3 bedrooms. I'd like to have this, but I need at least is the key word, versus I'd like to have that. Those are 2 different things. So again, we're looking at price point, 500 to 600,000, whatever it is. I need 4 bedrooms with an office. Cool. I only want single story because I don't want stairs, because my mom's going to be living with me in another year. So I don't want stairs, whatever the situation is. Yard size is a big factor. So we can kind of base things off of acreage or fenced in as well. Size and storage. I need a 2-car garage minimum. I'd like a 3, but I need a 2. Community features. I want to have a place for my kids to go to the pool. So we need pool inside the unit or at the house, one of the 2. So pool inside the neighborhood or at the house, one of the 2. Again, want-haves versus must-haves. And I tell people, listen, if we can get, 7 to 8 boxes checked on every single home we buy, that's fantastic. That's what we're looking for. Are you going to get all 10 boxes checked that you have? Probably not. But if we can get 70, 80% there might be a couple of things you may need to do down the road to the home that might get you that 8th and 9th box. So that's a big one. Speaking of one box, location. Location is a big box. It's going to, if you have children, it's going to determine where their schooling are or how far you are away. Maybe it's churches, maybe it's dining, maybe it's shopping, attractions, all those other things that you need to be close to, commute time to your work, all those things are there. So we really want to highlight, kind of a location and figure out where we want to be in Jacksonville. Jacksonville, as some of you know, is one of the largest cities in the U.S. by landmass. So it's a massive place. So when you say, I want to buy a home in Jacksonville, that's a loaded question. That is a lot of space. Okay. That can be all the way from almost Amelia Island to Yulee to Palm Coast to literally inside of Jacksonville. You can drive in Jacksonville for almost over an hour and still be in Jacksonville. So there's a lot of those places. That's a big one, is location. A lot of people, when they come to us, say, I want to buy a house. Cool. Where do you want to be? Well, I need to be somewhere in Jacksonville. And again, like I said, that's a big one. And again, if it's more of a situation where you know somebody that's lived in Jacksonville, maybe that's a start. Hey, I want to be over by them. Cool. Okay, well, we call that area Beach and Hodges, whatever it is. And that's just names of roads. Maybe it's Riverside, maybe it's Avondale, maybe it's Mandarin, maybe it's Ortega. There's all sorts of these different areas that are here, and just it's a big place. Working with a lender, we kind of talked about in the last video, but they're going to want your documents, W-2s, pay stubs, everything that you can do. They're going to run full credit checks. They're going to ask questions. It is a process working with that lender. And basically, it's very simple to me, is the more open you are with them, the quicker that process is going to go. The quicker you get them the documents they request, the easier that process is going to become. So once you find a lender, we can recommend one. For sure, we work with different types of lenders all the time. That's going to be a big one as far as just communicating with them, getting them all the information that they need so that way we can get through underwriting as quick as possible and get you clear to close and get this house sold for you and get you moved in. Contracts and disclosures. I don't expect most buyers or sellers to understand most of the contracts and the language that are in the contracts. We use primarily one contract in the state of Florida. It's a Florida as-is contract. And the term as-is is kind of misleading because we can talk about that later. But as-is does not mean you can't negotiate repairs. But at the same time, it is a standard as-is contract. The verbiage is very drilled down into buying and selling homes here in the state of Florida. And we can kind of break that down. If you have any questions on it, obviously, we'll go through it, but that's our job. We know the contracts. We've done, I personally have done over 600 deals with that same contract. So as people in our office. So we know that contract. We know what we can get away with and what we can't. And we go from there. Let's talk about big one, costs to expect. Inspections, we kind of hit that in the last video. Anywhere from $300 to $500 is pretty standard. If you want to do specialized inspections, whether it's septic tanks, pools, things like that, that cost can get a little higher up there because you're going to need to call someone else other than a general home inspector to do those. Appraisals, again, we talked about what an appraisal was the last time. Basically, the bank is making sure that whatever they're lending on is going to be worth it, essentially. So these are normally required by every lender unless you're doing upwards of 50% down in cash on a purchase. Sometimes you can bypass that, but that is something that we have to pay for. You pay for it at closing as a buyer, but you do pay for it. Earnest money, we talked about this as your binder deposit. Typically 1% of the purchase price. It's paid within 3 days of acceptance, typically 3 to 5 days, typically. So we talked about that a little bit. The other possible upfront costs that you have to get into would be home insurance. That's a big one. It's kind of a buzzword in the Florida market as of recent. Is home insurance has been really expensive as of recent, but as of 2026, we've kind of seen it steady out a little bit, where we're seeing some policies on some normal homes being anywhere from this is annual cost anywhere from $1,300 to $2,000. If you'd asked me 3 years ago, the average cost of insurance was probably $2,000 to $4,000, somewhere in that ballpark. We had a lot of insurance companies trying to get out of Florida, maybe just because we had, hurricanes back to back or whatever that situation is. But we are seeing better insurance pricing as of today. And a lot of that has to do with our legislation fighting against that. And that's probably a whole nother video for later. But home insurance has gotten a little bit cheaper here in the last few months. So home warranties, some people are very, it's kind of like when you go into Best Buy and you get a TV and they are, hey, would you like the accidental protection? I always say no. That's my personality. I don't think insurance things are always the greatest things, but home warranties on certain items can be advantageous to some people, especially first-time buyers if they have taken a lot of their cash to buy the home. And if something goes wrong, they want to be able to have things get fixed. A home warranty is not a bad idea. So maybe it's a $400 policy that if your dryer goes bad, they'll fix it. Your fridge goes bad, they'll fix it. Your AC goes out, they'll fix it. Largely, they will be doing Band-Aids. They're not going to replace a whole lot of those items for you, which is kind of why the problem that I have with them. They do serve a purpose. So home warranties are something to consider. And lastly, I talked about credit reports, typically paid at your closing by your lender cost, less than $100 typically, but credit reports are something you have to pay for. But that is pretty much all the cost and kind of how we want to really drill down and get into the buying process. And I'll leave this here. And if you guys need this information or want it, let me know, or you should be able to click on a link here and grab that information. But other than that, my name is Matty Miller with Pursuit Real Estate. Thanks for listening and have a great day.